Hi everyone, and welcome to our vlog on the topic of metacognition. Today me and Megan will be presenting some of the key ideas and concepts behind metacognition, as well as its application in the classroom. Just a note before we begin, I apologize for my voice. I've been kind of losing it in the past 2 or 3 days. I'll try my best to be as clear as possible. So in general, metacognition is defined as awareness or analysis of one's own learning or thinking processes. Essentially, it involves being aware of how and what we are learning and being able to modify these processes we use in order to learn. Evolutionary psychologists have even argued that metacognition in humans is perhaps a survival mechanism, but in the broadest sense, metacognition means to think about one's own thinking. Although metacognitive references date back as far as Aristotle, the modern father of the term metacognition is an American developmental psychologist by the name of John Flavel. Flavel is regarded as one of the founding researchers in the area of metacognition, and developed theories in metacognition starting in the late 60s and early 70s. To quote Flavel's own definition of metacognition, metacognition refers to one's knowledge concerning one's own cognitive processes or anything related to them, the learning relevant properties of information or data. For example, I am engaging in metacognition if I notice that I am having more trouble learning A than B, if it strikes me that I should double check C before accepting it as fact. Essentially, metacognition deals with having heightened awareness about our own learning and thought processes, and to be able to self-adjust and correct our own learning so that we, as learners, progress. Anne Brown was an educational theorist who is widely respected for her research on how students learn. She was dyslexic and could not read until the age of 13. Brown watched a documentary on how animals learn in their natural environments, which influenced her to major in psychology. She would later develop methods for more natural ways of learning with children, rather than rote-based approaches. Brown and her colleagues believe that metacognitive strategies, like general problem-solving routines, which include self-testing and summarizing, had advantages over memory-based or mnemonic teaching. Brown focused much of her career on finding methods to make learning more natural and engaging for children. Both her and her husband started a program called Fostering Community of Learners, in which students were encouraged to develop their own curriculum for learning. Brown and her husband are perhaps most remembered for the concept of guided discovery, which essentially encouraged students to develop their own learning techniques and curriculums with the guidance and help of the teacher. In terms of metacognition, Brown wanted students to engage in their own learning process, not simply to follow the path laid out for them by the teacher, and encourage students to learn how to learn.
Although Flavel and Brown are credited with introducing the term metacognition, they were not the first to study metacognitive processes. Child psychologist Jean Piaget also included metacognition in his theories of children's thinking. In Piaget's work, metacognition involves both conscious awareness and the capability of communicating one's rationale. These require a relativistic framework in which one's own perspective, reasoning, and actions are positioned as one of many possible perspectives and competing lines of reasoning or courses of action. Piaget theorized that peers challenge one another's thoughts and thus advance their cognitive development. His theory requires children to reflect on their own thinking. Lev Vygotsky's theories of children's thinking also included the metacognitive process. Vygotsky theorized that children develop the capacity for self-regulation through interaction with people who are more knowledgeable, such as a teacher or mentor. The teacher initially assumes responsibility for things such as setting goals and planning activities. Gradually, responsibility for these executive processes is given over to the child, who becomes increasingly capable of regulating his or her own cognitive activities. Vygotsky's theory provides the foundation for contemporary classroom intervention that begin with explicit instruction on the part of the teacher, followed by modeling and guided practice of cognitive and metacognitive strategies, with a gradual release of responsibility to the student.
Now we're going to cover some classroom applications. One of the simplest and most effective ways to get learners to begin using metacognitive strategies is to get them to ask questions of themselves. Having students answer questions that allow them to reflect on their own learning processes and strategies is essential to them developing metacognitive abilities. When working in groups, students can be asked to reflect on their own role in the team. Similar to asking questions, self-reflection is a vital tool when implementing metacognitive strategies in the classroom. If we are asking students to learn how to learn, evidence for the teacher will be gained from students' reflections. Getting students to critically analyze their own assumptions and how this impacts their learning will help in this process. By encouraging self-questioning, learners are asked to develop their own questions and then to answer them. This activity can help to enhance comprehension and get students thinking critically about what they are learning. It can also be applied to students meeting their personal goals or to help make it clearer for them what areas they need to focus on developing. Another classroom application, which is a little more straightforward, is to teach metacognitive strategies directly. Although this approach might be more suitable for a training course rather than a high school setting, directly teaching concepts of metacognition can allow students to see the options for self-learning themselves. If learners have knowledge in a specific area, getting them to engage in autonomous activities can get them to utilize metacognitive skills. By using a method such as an anchor activity, students can be challenged to answer their own questions, solve problems for themselves, and implement techniques of self-learning.
Here are some other classroom applications for metacognition. One is mentorship. Provide children with access to mentors. Children often learn by interacting with peers who are slightly more advanced. Teachers can promote experiences where struggling learners can observe and work alongside stronger students by carefully selecting and pairing students together. For example, when solving math problems, struggling learners then gain access to the metacognitive strategies of their mentors or peers. Teachers and classroom support workers also act as mentors and help guide or scaffold student learning. Solve problems with a team. Cooperative problem solving can enhance metacognitive strategies. Rather than always using a lecture format, teachers can organize lessons that allow time for students to discuss issues or problem solve together in small groups. Through these discussions, students learn about their own thinking and the thinking of their team members. Think aloud. Teachers can encourage their students to think aloud and report their thoughts while performing a difficult task, which helps to increase self-awareness of learning. Teachers can model this by giving an example of a problem and demonstrating how they would approach the problem by thinking each step aloud, thus demonstrating how they would think through to the solution. Self-explanation. Self-explanation in writing or speaking can help learners improve their comprehension of a difficult subject. A pair share activity is a good example of how teachers can encourage students to discuss their thinking with a partner and therefore to learn about their own thought processes. Risk-taking and making errors. Teachers can provide opportunities for students to take risks and make mistakes. Metacognitive skills include self-assessment and help-seeking strategies. When students are given the opportunity to make errors in learning, it stimulates reflection on the causes of their errors. Teachers can encourage students to take risks in their learning and teach them that it's okay to make mistakes. It is through evaluating their efforts and their thought processes that students become aware of their thinking. As we discussed in our presentation, metacognition refers to awareness of one's own knowledge, what one does and doesn't know, and one's ability to understand, control, and manipulate one's cognitive processes. When teachers cultivate students' abilities to reflect on, monitor, and evaluate their learning strategies, students become more self-reliant, flexible, and productive. Improving metacognitive strategies related to students' schoolwork also provides young people with tools to reflect and grow in their emotional and social lives. Thank you for listening to our presentation.